Get ready to dive back into the world of Classroom for Heroes as we recap the thrilling first 2 episodes in a video that will leave you wanting more. Episode 1 of Classroom for Heroes begins with a breathtaking battle between the hero and the Demon King. The two engage in a fierce battle exceeding the speed of sound. The battle rips powerful shockwaves and the two are equally matched. The clashes only drain the strength out of them, and they are left standing in front of each other panting. In a stunning finale, both drive their sword through each other's chests, killing them. The scene cuts to a bright new morning at Rosewood Academy with the entry of a new transfer student named Blade. Everything seems very new to him, and he's enthusiastic to make friends. Blade runs around introducing himself to every student he sees. He runs into Ernest Flaming, a formidable girl referred to by everyone as the Empress. Despite her strict demeanor, Blade goes ahead to greet and introduce himself. Ernest is appalled by Blade's casual attitude toward becoming a hero, believing he is unfit to be a part of the Hero Academy. Blade asks her for directions to the headmaster's office. To her surprise, His Majesty himself is seated in the headmaster's seat. Demonstrating his easygoing nature, Blade proceeds very casually to greet His Majesty, triggering Ernest. His Majesty asks Ernest to leave and let them have a discussion in private. Blade tells His Majesty his intentions and asks him to go about like a normal person. His Majesty states his intentions to make amends to the system left behind by his predecessor trying to make heroes. Blade then makes his way to the advanced training arena where Ernest is supervising everyone's training. Ernest is taken aback to see someone with such a casual attitude make it to the advanced training section. She challenges Blade to slice through an enchanted metal armor. Blade takes up the challenge and uses his move, the Dragon Eater. The blow was devastating and obliterates not just the target, but also blows a massive hole in the wall of the arena. The shockwave released by this rips the clothes of all the trainees to pieces. Later that day, Ernest sits down for lunch at the table reserved for her. Blade sees her alone and decides to join in, calling her his friend. Ernest isn't amused by this, however. Blade sits right there and relishes the lunch. Later that night, Ernest thinks of the events with a fuzzy feeling. Just then, the demon sword on the rack starts to vibrate with a voice speaking out. The sword demands Ernest surrender herself to it. However, being the next head of the Flaming family, she cannot give in to this urge. The next day, Ernest enters training with a new power. The demon sword tries to overpower her mentally, and she almost ends up hurting her training partners Leonard and Sophie. She also challenges Blade but faints right before. Blade carries her to the infirmary for medical attention. Unfortunately, Ernest is affected by spells and curses, which are outside the staff's expertise. Blade decides to investigate what is going on and enters a highly protected lab. To access the data, he researches the demon sword Ernest spoke about. The sword is called Asmodeus, and it has its own will and grants its owner tremendous power. Later after class, Blade confronts Ernest about the sword. Ernest explains that when she was 6 years old, she had unknowingly laid hands on the sword, which filled her with the will, flooding her with a hunger of blood and carnage. She has been suppressing these urges since then. Blade urges her to face the demon and force it to acknowledge her as the owner. She is afraid that failure can result in the demon completely taking over, but Blade reassures her that if she gave it a shot and something like that happened, he will take down the demon himself. Believing in Blade's ability, she calls on the demon to form a pact with her and the two engage in a fierce battle. She emerges victorious against the demon and acquires ownership of the sword. A bright new day of training dawns and Blade practices a 1-on-2 battle with his fellow batchmates as episode 2 begins. He effortlessly dominates them in combat. Ernest walks up and asks him to take the training seriously, but it isn't challenging enough for him. Blade notices something different about Ernest, but fails to realize it's the new hairstyle. Heartbroken by this, she sends Blade off to practice with Sophie instead. Sophie obediently complies and takes every word spoken to her as an order. She is accustomed to fighting bare fists and isn't very handy with a sword. Recognizing her potential, Blade takes it upon himself to teach her to wield a sword. In due process of training, Blade finds himself drawn to Sophie and decides to train her after practice hours. Sophie is a quick learner and slashes through the enchanted metal armor. By the end of the day, Sophie is concerned about surpassing Ernest and hopes to become skilled enough. She displays her impressive grappling skill against Blade, taking him down with a move. The two get close and decide to continue learning the next day. The next day, His Majesty catches wind of Blade and Sophie. He breaks the truth about Sophie's origin to him. Sophie is the product of an artificial great hero project that made 12 iterations of Sophie. The project aims to artificially grant the powers of a hero to a suitable candidate. Blade feels it's his fault that Sophie has to give up her normal life. His existence created the need for an artificial hero. He takes it upon himself to ensure she lives a normal life and sets off to find out what life for a young person is like. After running a few desperate inquiries, he finds out from his batch mates that youth is about love, and love is about going on dates and spending time together. The concept of dating is new to him, and he creates a plan to go on a friendly date with Sophie. He asks Sophie out, and she accepts the proposal. Both Blade and Sophie, inexperienced in dating, happily play along a minute-by-minute agenda. Ernest and two other girls from the academy try to spy on them through the date. The two set off walking hand in hand, having ice cream and feeding the fish. Ernest jealously spies on them throughout. The two get close drinking water from the same coconut. Blade feels his heart beating faster than ever. Towards the end of the date, both of them settle down at a fountain to talk. Blade tells Sophie that they are friends. Sophie believes friends do not keep any secrets from each other. She tells him she is a subject of the Artificial Great Hero Project, where she is the final product of a 12 model project. She displays some of her powers by manipulating the laws of physics, but also states that she has incomplete control over them. Blade apologizes and confesses to her that he is the reason she didn't get to live a normal life. He is the great hero, but his powers have gone now. He blames himself for not being able to save every soul because every time he cannot, people get upset. Sophie comforts him, telling Blade about the journey she made to find herself after getting rescued by His Majesty. Along her journey, she came across countless people and towns that sang his praise for saving them. She assures him his existence is a blessing. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episodes of Classroom for Heroes.